Humankind have always tried to figure out the answers about the unknown. Almost every culture has a creation myth that explains how did it all started and which have influenced societies and their environment. In the course of history, there have been a wide range of scientists who wanted to go beyond the creation myths and to understand how did species first appear. Some of them include Charles Darwin, Lamarck, Gregor Mendel, Alfred Wallace, and so on. Many of the theories biologists have put forward are quite controversial. It appears to be that there is still an immense group of people who do believe in creation myths and are totally reluctant to these theories. Some religions claim that the world is only 10,000 years old and that science doesn't overlap religion.
Salut all guys, Pablo's here. Creation myths tell us how things began. These are narratives which relate the beginning of the world and how people first came to it. Furthermore, they talk about how the world is understood in a particular community or in a certain religion. So, when it comes to talk about myths, people often refer to them as false stories with no foundation. However, cultures say and claim that all of these cultures are totally true. These stories are considered sacred and can be found in nearly all known religious traditions. Moreover, like myths are developed in oral traditions, you can typically find lots of variations and lots of multiple versions. There are only few people who still completely believe in the creation myths, since they aren't as developed as you are, because they live in separated tribes or something similar, something kind of that, and they are away from the population, so they aren't as developed as we are. Some people agree that with the fact that it is acceptable to combine both religion and science, or there are other people who say that we cannot combine the former with the latter. Do you currently believe in them or not anymore? Either way your thoughts are, we are going to talk about the most interesting ones. China's cosmic egg. The first living being was Panku, who grew for 18,000 years inside a cosmic egg. When he hatched, the cell above him became the sky, while the piece below became the earth. The opposites in nature were separated as well, male and female, wet and dry, light and dark, yin and yang, etc. After all his effort, Panku literally fell to pieces and his features became the natural world. His limbs turned into mountains, his blood to rivers, his breath to the wind, his voice the thunder, his hair the grass, his sweat the rain, and so on. His left eye became the sun and his right one became the moon. The second story is the Sanema people, who are part of the Yanomamo group of tribes who live in the Amazon rainforest. Each tribe has its own collection of stories which passed orally from generation to generation. Because of this, their creation myths vary a lot. Generally, however, the Sanema believe that all living things are descended from original ancestors whose spirits still inhabit the forest. One story has Peribo, the moon, eating the souls of children. This angers to Harina, who shot Peribo in the belly with an arrow. His blood spilled to the earth, forming puddles from which mortal men arose. The most belligerent human beings were created where large amounts of blood fell, and there were only a few drops fell. less violent men were born. The third and last but not least, we have the third story, which is from Brahma. Brahma began from nothingness. By thought alone, he created the waters, into which he deposited his semen. This grew into a golden egg, out of which he was born. By thought again, he split the egg into two, and the house became heaven and earth. Brahma grew lonely, so he split himself into two to form male and female. In one variation of the story, Brahma repeatedly splits himself in two until all living things are created from his body. In another, the first man and woman made in different animals form until life forms are born. Well, so living creation myths aside, what is evolution? Do you really know what lies beyond that word?
The evolution is a scientific explanation for the huge diversity of life on the whole planet. It is the change in the heritable trait of biological organisms over successive generations, which is the result of improvements in a species.
The evolution is such a gripping topic to talk about, isn't it? It is very likely that you have ever wondered about how these scientists realize that there is evolution if there is no time enough so as to know that. Well, there are super explanations for this. As you might expect, scientists cannot travel in time, at least in the present, but they can rely on the hints which are hidden all around the world. And yes, I'm taking fossils into consideration. Any evidence from these fossils is open for interpretation, as with any scientific data. Now we're going to mention and to quote the most relevant and important theories of the natural selection, or the evolution. However, everything began with French biologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck. His theory, the Lamarckism, proposed that organisms responded to the environment by changing themselves, which include changing the way they behave and their own traits. He suggested that any organism can pass on the characteristics that it has acquired during its lifetime to its offspring. Furthermore, he said that any organism loses the characteristics that the organism doesn't require. All of this is covered in his theory, the Lamarckism. So, to give you an illustration of what I mean, according to Lamarck, if a blacksmith strengthens his muscles during his lifetime, his children will develop the muscles in the same way according to this. In addition, the ancestors of carnivorous mammals such as lions or tigers, etc., they had ordinary claws for tearing the flesh of their prey. As the latter gained in running, the carnivorous mammals had also to run faster so as to capture the prey. So, like their claws were a hindrance for them, they developed retractile claws which passed on their offspring. Lamarck is considered to have attempted to explain the evolution of the species. He wasn't right at all, though. There was a man with the name of Charles Darwin who was certain with his theory, not like Lamarck was. As a matter of fact, Lamarck was not alive the moment Charles Darwin published his theory, The Origin of Species, though Lamarck wouldn't have accepted that theory.
Lamarck's laws. There are two laws that Lamarck proposed. First law: in every animal which has not passed the limit of its development, a more frequent and continuous use of any organ gradually strengthens, develops and enlarges that organ, and gives it a power proportional to the length of time it has been so used. While the permanent disuse of any organ imperceptibly weakens and deteriorates it, and progressively diminishes its functional capacity until it finally disappears. Second law: all the acquisitions or losses wrought by nature in individuals through the influence of the environment in which the race has long been placed, hence through the influence of the predominant use or permanent disuse of any organ. All these are preserved by reproduction to the newest individuals which arise, provided the acquired modifications are common to both sexes, or at least to the individuals which produce the young. Nevertheless, Lamarck was quite criticized because there was no evidence in many of his conjectures. His first proposition suggests the tendency of beings to increase in size. This is contradicted by many plants which reduce their size during their evolution. His second principle suggested that organs are a result of new needs. He believed that the desire of an animal leads to the formation of new structures. This is quite manifestly false. To help you understand, this would mean that the man he mused, birds can fly, so why can I? That man should have sprouted wings and taken to the air. And last but not least, his fourth proposition relied on the fact that children inherit some characteristics of their parents, which eventually resulted to be a mistake. August Weismann was the first person to distinguish between heritable changes and those which cannot be inherited.
Thomas Malthus was a political economist who was concerned about what he considered the decline in the living conditions in the 19th century in England. Thomas Malthus' most important work, an essay on the principle of population as it affects the future improvement of society, was published in 1798. In it, Malthus raised doubts about whether a nation could ever reach the point where laws were no longer required and in which people lived harmoniously and prosperously. Charles Darwin adapted the Malthus ideas to his theory of evolution. It was clear to him that humans must evolve like any other animal did. According to Thomas Malthus, population will always grow rather faster than the food available to feed them. According to his theory, he strongly recommends that the world's population should stop increasing since the available capacity and the resources of the biosphere are insufficient to meet future needs.
Charles Darwin was not the first person to suggest that a species had evolved over time. The ancient Greeks had this idea more than 2000 years ago. In the 5th century BC, Anaximander of Miletus believed that from the warming of the water and the earth, fish were born or animals really similar to them.
As a child, Darwin loved to collect shells, postal francs, bird eggs, and other objects. At the age of 22, he was offered to spend 2 years on a ship sailing around the world. During the voyage, he observed the similarity between animals and plants living in different parts of the world. After many years of observation, Darwin became convinced that species were not fixed, but that they had evolved from their ancestors over the course of extremely long periods of time. This is the origin of the Darwinism. Charles Darwin was born on February 12 in 1809. He is considered to be one of the most famous biologist who has ever lived on account of the theory he created. He is such an admirable scientist due to this, the Darwinism, which changed completely the way in which we understand nature. The theory of evolution by natural selection, or Darwinism, was first formulated in Darwin's book On the Origin of Species in 1859, or On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Darwin's general theory is based on the idea that individuals pass on to their offspring the characteristics that enable them to survive. In addition, Charles Darwin referred to mutations when over time a group of individuals of the same species give rise to two different groups of the species enough distinct to belong to separate ones.
Natural selection acts to preserve and accumulate minor advantageous genetic mutations. Imagine a member of a species who developed a functional advantage. It sprout wings and learned to fly. Its offspring will inherit that advantage and pass it on to their offspring. The disadvantaged members of the same species would gradually die out, leaving only the advantaged members of that species. Darwinism is a process by which organisms change over time as a result of changes in heritable, physical, or behavioral traits. Changes that allow an organism to better adapt to its environment will help it survive and have more offspring. Eventually, Darwin came up with 4 conclusions. Individuals within a species differ from one to another. Offspring generally resemble their parents. In all species, more offspring are born that can survive to adulthood and reproduce. Some individuals are better suited to the environment than others, and they survive and reproduce more effectively than others. Darwin suggested the following statements, which together make up the theory of natural selection. Individuals that survive to reproduce pass on to their offspring the characteristics that enable them, the parent, to survive. Over time, a group of individuals belonging to a single species may give rise to 2 different groups that are sufficiently distinct to belong to 2 separate species. The theory of evolution is one of the great intellectual revolutions of human history, since it has drastically changed our perception of the world and of our place in it. Charles Darwin put forth a coherent theory of evolution and amassed a great body of evidence in support of it. On the Origin of Species proved unexpectedly popular, with an entire stock of 1,250 copies oversubscribed when it went on sale to booksellers the 22nd of November in 1859. After the publication of On the Origin of Species in 1859, the idea that life had evolved was an active source of academic debate focused on the philosophical, social, and religious implications of evolution. Today, the modern evolutionary synthesis is accepted by a huge majority of scientists. However, evolution remains a disputed concept for some theists. He won notable awards like the Fellowship of the Royal Society, the Wollaston Medal, and the Copley Medal. Theories do not show up from nowhere. They require observation and data, as well as a bit of creativity and conjecture from part of the scientists. Long before Darwin and Wallace, there were some farmers and breeders who were trying to manipulate their animals and plants over the course of decades in order to make minor changes in them with selection. Selective breeding is also known as artificial selection. It is a process by which humans breed plants and animals, particular genetic characteristics. We have been doing this for thousands of years, ever since we first bred food crops from wild plants and started domesticating animals about 10,000 years ago. This is when we made the transition from hunter-gatherers to farmers. We no longer needed to wander around to get food supplies. Wheat, barley, lentils, peas, rice, and potatoes were all cultivated by early citizens. We also began to tame animals for milk, meat, hide, and hides. Goats, sheep, and chickens are thought to have been the first animals to be domesticated, followed later by bigger animals like horses and oxen for plowing and transportation. Agriculture allowed fewer people to provide more food. Regular, predictable food production led to increased populations and density of people. People now had the time to travel, trade, and communicate. Settlements began growing. The first villages and then cities were both near fields of domesticated plants. Civilizations are founded upon selective breeding. How does selective breeding work? Parents with the desired characteristics are selected from a mixed population and are bred together. From the offspring, those with the desired characteristics are then also bred together. This continues over many generations until all the offspring show the desired characteristics. Just think of all the breeds of dogs that are around today. These were all selectively bred from a common wolf ancestor. The desired characteristics that we select for can be chosen for usefulness or appearance, such as insect and disease resistance, in food crops by breeding from the naturally resistant individuals to increase yields, animals which produce more meat or milk to increase yields, domestic dogs with a gentle nature, large or unusual flowers. We just keep breeding and selecting, and breeding once more until we hit the desired jackpot. Look at what we've done to the modern chickens in 50 years. It's over 4 times bigger due to selectively breeding. And that's all for today's episode. Don't forget to leave your thumbs up and give us a commentary telling us what would you like our next video to be about. So, moreover, it will be such a great idea if you consider to donate, because you will have our PayPal account in the commentary section box, in the commentary box below. So that's all for today. If you would like more, do what I said. And as always, see you tomorrow.
Love me when I'm lonely. Love me when I'm love me when love me when love me when
Oh, wait. Now, behind the scenes. Palmada. Para sincronizar el audio.
Scientists realize that there's evolution if there is no time enough in order to know.
Haz de escena 1, por favor.
Escena 1. Primer párrafo, punto 1, 2, 3, 0, XX, tiempo. Mundial.
No, o sea, aullado. A tu lado, entre César y tú. No hace falta que estéis tan juntos, Ahí está bien, ahí está bien.
Lamarck is considered to have been... Mierda. Me está viendo la niña, tío.
Baja de voz, por favor. Que no te quede normal, tío. Baja de voz, por favor. Baja de voz, por favor.
Pablo, vamos a ver.
Pablo, no te flipes, Pablo.
Baja eso.
Pablo.
Baja eso, por favor. Te apagó la luz.
Pablo.
Baja eso. Me da igual, baja eso.
¿Qué coño estáis haciendo? Pues fotos, no lo ves. O grabando.
Pablo ese, tío. Hijo de puta.
General Theory, ¿lo lees?
¿Qué tengo que leer?
Este párrafo.
Darwin.
Eso, Darwin's general theory is based on the following.
No.
¿No?
Muy difícil. No sabes leer inglés, pero intenta.
¿Sabes?
¿Tú
Yo soy
sabes?
de primero.
Va, dilo un poquito.
Inténtalo.
No sé. Que no
¿No
sé.
quieres? Vale. Bueno, pues enséñatelo tú.
Individuos.
¡Qué bien!
coño. Cuidado.
In it was passed on to the all things the characteristics that enable them to survive. Yes or no?
Yes.
No vas a hacer, vale.
That was your theory.
Ah, para tío, tendrías que decirlo.
Me cago en la puta. Bueno, va. Ha sido una experiencia inolvidable.